I feel like I'm a pilot in a ship here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. And we are going to turn for an hour to our workforce jurisdiction. It is wonderful to have so many members of our workforce team here. And so why don't I invite to the table? So we're going to do this for an hour, 9 to 10, and then we're going to pivot back to housing and try and get our housing bill out, which is what we're hoping for. So Kendall and Jay, would you be kind enough to join us? Oh, we have 3 chairs.
I wasn't sure if Tiffany was joining or not.
No, Tiffany's not joining us. We decided that we really wanted to focus on the workforce pieces that we're working on right now in H34 and go from there. Great. Welcome.
Thank you. I am Kendall Smith, the Deputy Commissioner at the Vermont Department of Labor.
And I'm Jay Ramsey, the Director of Workforce Development at the Department of Labor.
We have been invited back in this morning to cover 2 to 3 primary topics, which is what we've prepared, which is talking about removing the income tax on military pensions. Then we were asked to talk about workforce data and information as it relates to the construction trades and housing related to our next conversation. And then if there is time to explain the difference between the Department of Labor's activities and the Office of Workforce Strategy and Development. Executive Director Sabina Haskell is also here as needed when we get to that part of the conversation.
Great.
So Jay and I are going to kind of ping pong a little bit back and forth between each other, but we thought we would start with the information we have on removing the tax on military pensions, which we are very supportive of the language you are considering to do that. In your slide deck, you will see, second or third slide, an anecdotal message that I have carried with me, which is something that was received during my time in the governor's office. And if I could have the privilege, it's very short, just to read it. We have data and numbers too, but just to add kind of the storytelling aspect.
Stories are important in this business.
This individual said, I am writing to advocate against taxing retired military pensions. I resided in upstate New York and I've always loved Vermont. I would love to retire there, but I cannot when other states offer tax-free pensions. If Vermont removes the pension tax for active duty military, I would move there. Seems like a win-win. Please try to keep pushing for that. I didn't put the individual's name, but I'm happy to verify that if anyone would like offline. It was a gentleman that wrote in from, I believe this is pronounced Port Angeles, Washington. I do not know exactly how to pronounce that town. Okay. So with that, Jay, do you want to go into some of the context in next slides?
Sure. So next slide. So after we were here last time, I went and did a little bit more research with a data set that I'm not exactly familiar with, but I'm going to give you my best. So I know the JFO and the tax department and some other folks have come in to talk about Vermont in the context of the nation. I don't know if you've seen a map, but this is a map from the Military Officers Association, which is a resource for military officers as they're looking to transition out. It helps them analyze all of the options. And when they look at this map, they see Vermont in the context of all of the surrounding green, which are the states that don't tax the pension, and Vermont is the outlier, even though it's a partial exemption now.
And I think everyone remembers the map just recently turned yellow, like 1 to 2 years ago when we passed that partial exemption. So until just 1 to 2 years ago, Vermont would have been red in California.
Okay, so we're making progress. And obviously you see California as the red state in this context, that they don't exempt anything. So.
And what we do have that gets us yellow is still a very small exemption. I'm going to make an assumption, but correct me if I'm wrong. Everybody knows what's currently in statute. I believe you're all serving when that passes. We don't need to go through that.
And so this is pulling on the thread of some other work that we as a state have done and that the legislature has done with the governor Two bills passed in 2018, Act 119,
Yep.
and in 2020, Act 152.
I believe Senator Clarkson, I'm hoping these might look familiar because I believe you were on Senate Gov Ops. If I'm like racking my brain when we did these.
Yeah.
The first one, Act 119, is something that the administration and the Office of Professional Regulation worked on together and put
Yeah.
forward, which was to recognize military credentials towards civilian licensure. If you are in a profession that requires professional licensure, so just for an anecdote or an example, if you become a medic during your time in military service, there is a pathway to get that easily recognized, whether it's for an LNA, an LPN, I'm forgetting the exact equivalent of what we recognize it for in Vermont. And one of the impetuses for doing that was, again, to make us a place where veterans would come for their second careers, knowing they have valuable skills that can contribute to our workforce. When we passed this, Senator Clarkson, I feel free to add, you might remember, it made a national splash. I think we were the first state to really do this. And when it came out, there was kind of like a spike in promotion and recognition, but there's definitely more in conjunction with potentially passing the military pension, income tax exemption, which we'll talk about a little further on, that we can be doing to promote the robust kind of picture and packages of why we would want veterans to come settle here in Vermont. Act 119 was followed by Act 152, which was something else the administration and the Office of Professional Regulation had worked on with the legislature. That was the uniform licensing standards, basically reducing the need for so many specific interstate compacts, where kind of the idea was if you're moving to Vermont from Colorado and you're an accountant or a hairdresser, you're not going to forget how to be an accountant or a hairdresser on your drive from Colorado to Vermont. And so more easy, and if you again need a professional licensing recognition of your license in another state, the idea at the time was kind of easy in, easy out, where you do need to then follow all of our Vermont specific rules and regulations should they differ from the state you're coming from. And that's on you to make sure you understand them and know them. And again, we were, I think, the second state to do this.
We were one of the, I remember we were one of the first.
It might have been just after Connecticut. I'm trying to remember back. But again, these are two things that we've done that can make it easier for military families. So on what I'm highlighting Act 152 is if there's a trailing spouse, let's say, that needs licensure, or you have an adult kind of dependent or child that is working. Some work we've already done that we can couple with this income tax exemption. I just thought that was worth calling out as we start to talk about promoting.
And many military spouses have one of those careers that are very flexible and very portable.
Yes.
On purpose,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
And on the next slide, we're continuing on with this sort of thread of what are the existing infrastructure to be able to receive an influx if this were to be passed. In the last session, I mentioned the Jobs for Veterans State Grant. That is federal funding that gives us 4.5 FTEs that cover the whole state, providing individualized and career training services, really targeting those veterans with significant barriers to employment. But the side effect is anybody who's a veteran can access these services and be referred to our offices. We provide supports just like any other job seeker. We also have a program that we're facilitating with the Department of Defense called SkillBridge, which takes someone in the last 6 months of their service, and the military will pay their wages to be placed with an employer in Vermont. It's sort of like a work-based learning experience on steroids. It gives the departing service member an opportunity to connect with a Vermont business, learn that job, learn that business, and so that's another opportunity we have. And then the other one that's related to programs we administer is the GI Bill. And the GI Bill can, on the next slide, talk about.
Before you leave this, may I just ask a question?
Sure.
How many, we have these programs currently, how many people are we seeing? What's the uptick?
Last year in the JVSG program, I was afraid you were going to ask this and I didn't. It's in the last presentation. I think last year we served for the whole year around 400 individuals and around 100 businesses. This year, the number is a little bit smaller. Obviously, we're not all the way through the year, but we had a lot of retirements and we've had turnover in the staff in that program, so it's affected our capacity to serve people. But that program is now fully staffed.
Partnering people with individual businesses.
Yes, and our the Jobs for Veterans State Grant go out, and there's a military support network, a veteran support network across the state, and nonprofits and other organizations convene meetings, they provide services, and we go to those meetings and we go to those locations, like Joshua's House is one,
Right.
the Veterans Hospital is one.
And so
Right.
we're not asking for this year, I just want to be very clear about this, but in terms of being forward-looking, in terms of if we were to pass this and be measuring the success of how many people are we recruiting and relocating, this could be a program where we might need more capacity in the future. Again, we'll have to see how it goes to make sure that once we are kind of getting people hooked in, wanting to move to Vermont, that we are able to provide services if they need them, to match them with jobs if that's, again, of interest.
Okay, and then on this slide, again, another way the federal government has to connect veterans to training and jobs is through the GI Bill. There's a lot to it. The little graphic on this side has basically 3 bullets that you need to know to summarize the program. It covers a portion of monthly housing and living expenses if they're in a registered apprenticeship program. It pays they're earning a wage while they're learning a trade, and the GI Bill stipend decreases as their wage increases. And just to add here, a component of a registered apprenticeship program is increasing wages as the person grows in skills over the length of the program.
So this is for all veterans. Is there an additional program for retirees, for military retirees that either above or beyond this?
The definition of veteran for this one.
Yeah,
Just
there's some
includes everybody.
specific definitions for veteran. There's some specific definitions for which part of the bill applies to whom based on what era they were in. And then there's a post 9/11 component. So I don't
Yeah, okay.
have all of those details here, but just how does this affect programs right now? Last year in the report that we gave, so our apprenticeship program reports on the federal fiscal year, October 1st to September 30th. There were 114 veterans representing 7% of the apprenticeship population in Vermont. Their top 3 occupations were electrician, plumber, and state trooper.
We'll talk a little bit more about electricians and plumbers shortly when we
Yeah.
shift to kind of a
To
housing
housing.
focus.
And a state trooper, is that an apprenticeship program? Oh, they have, I hadn't realized that.
Yes, it takes
How
a year.
many, do you know, I'm sorry to meet, how many apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeship programs do we have in the state?
Wow.
30?
It's more than, there's 37 occupations,
Mhm.
but I consider each employer's program to be an individual program, so.
37 occupations, which is what, and it spans everything from now teachers to state troopers, and we have the construction trades we'll talk about in a while, but we're looking to continue to grow the occupations that we offer.
I know we need more electricians and I know we need more plumbers. I haven't heard recently state troopers. Do we have a recruitment problem there?
We
Yes.
do,
Yes,
yes,
we're down about 20 still.
we do, yep.
They just had they do testing, they just had a pop-up testing event in Pitts.
There's 2 areas, there's one north and one south, but I don't remember the exact towns. Was that just this past weekend? I think it was just this past weekend.
But it's still,
Yes.
yeah, it's still
And
substantial.
Police Academy graduation is, I think, at the end of the month, and I do not have in front of me how many people will be graduating from that. Happy to send those details, but yes, the short answer is yes.
I'm thinking about a career change. You think they take a 47-year-old?
Actually,
State trooper?
there are some age guardrails, and I'm not sure. But maybe if on behalf, I should probably say yes and then find out, but
We can always
we
ask
want
that.
everybody. Anyway.
Okay,
So getting a little bit more granular in
Yeah.
terms of bringing some data, in terms of where is this population in Vermont and what do we know about who's already here?
So,
I
this
think we
is
need the next slide.
Sorry,
Slide.
we should see some maps.
just one, there you go.
Oh,
The back one. I don't want to see one. Okay, thanks. So this map is a heat map, and this is a set of data that I haven't been familiar with, but doing my best to make the data that's here alive. I will note that there is a little discrepancy in the number from what Bob Burke provided last week when we were here. It's maybe 500. So this is a 2023 data set. We're comparing the vet population data with the US Census Bureau. And so this first map shows the veteran concentration as a calculation of the veteran population compared to the portion of the population in each county. And you'll see here that of all veterans over age 18 in the state of Vermont, Essex County has the highest concentration. And this is because it's an older population. It's also a relatively small number. Small number of veterans, small number of residents, which makes this look this way. And if we could look at the next map, I narrowed the parameters down to working age, 18 to 64. I recognize people over the age of 64 can work, but for the purposes of this activity, 18 to 64, this map shows a settlement of veterans and focuses on that population. And you can see the map shows Chittenden County with the largest concentration of veterans, followed by Windsor County, Rutland County, and Washington County. And Grand Isle County got cut off, but it's 1.3%.
And we do know, according to the joint fiscal note, national data, about 70% of people exiting the military are between the ages of 35 and 50. And so again, what we're seeing is we're already an interstate demographically, as we know, but it, again, I think illustrates that we're really missing out on attracting those young working age families, that we need to grow the population between 35 and 50. You are clearly still most people able to work kind of in your prime. And we could be doing some better targeting if we were to pass this for that age group. I don't know if more better is a technical term, bear with me, stronger.
Okay, and then so related to the sort of question at hand about targeted recruitment, which is another component of what you're proposing, as Kendall alluded to, it's the outreach activities that are allowed under the Jobs for Veterans State Grant are really specific to those that are in state. We do take a little liberty by going to Fort Drum every year as a recruitment exercise, but we do bring other staff who are JVSG staff there. So as we're looking to the next year, possibly next time, we're trying to do more focused recruitment of people for military installations. That's an important consideration. The recruitment events that we do participate in are about providing information about Vermont, what the communities look like, what they could expect from a policy perspective, and also part of what we're intending to do if this were to pass is to build on existing infrastructure, which I think is something that travel and tourism would come in and also say. We have an infrastructure to bring people into the state, to make initial contact, to help assign them to their chosen resettlement area through the GROW grants. That's a grant program that ACCD administers. So initially it would be building on some existing infrastructure.
Sorry, we've just lost you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, apologies, I'm trying to reconnect, it's, for
Ivy.
some reason it kicked me out, I think. That's weird.
It'll come back. Right now, it's just
Yeah.
words. You can hear us say on this slide, but what I really think we're also trying to illustrate is this feels kind of like the last puzzle piece, where we already have some programs, we already have some advantages with licensing that we can be building off of, and this is kind of that last piece of the puzzle to really help promote Vermont as a great place for veterans to come and have their second careers, should this be where they want. There seems to be, again, I can't necessarily quantify this with precision, but that kind of anecdotal desire for it based off of, I'm sure, communication you all have received, things that we used to see into the governor's office. And we'd work with ACCD and other partners in state government through all the tools that each of us have. They're each a little unique, but to figure out what that promotion and that campaign
And what that marketing might look like.
exactly, like we
Because
don't.
Heather's already done pieces
Yes,
of this.
and we didn't list on our slide, but again, the Secretary of State's office, who Office of Professional Regulation, has been a huge partner with us in this work, and they have ways that they might be able to engage through their lists. And so, there's a lot of thinker partners that we could convene to figure out what is the best strategy to
Yeah.
get the word out, including the Adjutant General. I don't know if he's been in here, but he
Yes,
is
of course he
very
does. Yeah.
enthusiastic about telling the story of the Guard. So,
Well,
that was the words on this slide. I don't know if it's back yet, but.
no, Heather has talked to us about her Think Vermont program and how this could be expanded to focus very directly.
I think the other component here that we also want to mention, it's not on the slide, but the tourism budget and the marketing budget have been cut. And obviously, if it remained that way, it would impede our ability to do some of this more specific outreach.
I understand that's not this committee and that they might be settling
No,
the
but
conference, budget conference.
It's actually
at some
our
point,
committee
but-
to advocate for.
Yes.
So, I have spoken to our team, and this is gonna be a challenge.
We're concerned about it, not just for this effort, but for all recruitment and relocation efforts, if our goal is to try to be competitive and market Vermont. I was at a conference, just sorry, as an aside, last week, and I was sitting next to somebody from one of the education associations, and he told me that he's originally from Wisconsin. He doesn't have any plans to move back to Wisconsin, but he's been getting targeted on LinkedIn, where he's like, I'm getting all these kind of like ads and messages being like, have you ever thought about moving back to Wisconsin? And is this like a thing? And I was like, well, I'm not sure how you feel about it, but I'm actually really jealous of Wisconsin. And if you wouldn't mind sending me a screenshot
Right.
next time you get one of those, because we would love to have the resources and the budget to really be that aggressive in terms of trying to get more Vermont residents. And maybe there's a way you can opt out if it's bothering you. Again, that's a whole nother conversation around privacy, but I'm actually very jealous that you're getting those, or for Wisconsin, and that they have whatever they're doing where you're receiving those.
Great.
One of the
Um,
things
yeah.
Randy.
that my two interns have been doing
Yeah.
is looking at other states as to how they do recruitment, how they
Mhm.
deal with veterans, bring them in, and also with, there are transition officers at each major military installation that also have connections, and we've been looking at what the installations do in terms of looking at states and their programs. So we're gathering some information, I've got some. Deliberately, we did not put any money in this bill for recruitment. We felt it was important, one, to get the program up.
Yeah.
Second, in talking with ACCD and talking with labor previously, the idea was, well, we already have people doing various things like that in that area, and they can, in fact, in their existing appropriation, at least go through the thought process
Right.
of figuring out what we should be doing, and
Right.
then next time, we may
Yes.
be looking for money.
Yes.
But right now, our marketing budget being cut is not what we need, so we've
No.
been working on that.
Just wanted
Yeah.
to put
Yeah,
that
thank you.
plug in for our
It's already
sister
there.
agency that will also have ripple impacts into our success. All right, so should we transition to construction
Any-
and housing, or is there any more?
Any
on
questions on
military?
on the, because I think as we think about this, depending on what gets passed, this session, I would hope we would just then dive into, the opportunity and how we want to, directly.
The one thing that I would add, if I could, please, is there has been a bill that was just passed either yesterday or the day before
Yes.
in the House.
Right.
That also adds military retirement. It does it a different way, and what it does is it puts a cap.
Yeah.
So
On
it's a-
income.
on income, total income, and the income, and the thing that we did not mention in this presentation thus far is spouses. Because
Well, we
spouses.
have mentioned spouses a lot here because we're hoping to attract.
Well, because that obviously is a key element, and when.
Right, and that's what the licensing work we've done to align.
Precisely, but some of the demographics suggest that, for example, many of the professions that we are looking for on the spouse side also
Oh,
added in the
yes.
equation.
Absolutely,
particularly
that's a,
teachers.
that's a
Yes.
given.
And
Yeah.
the risk of what was passed in the House is it put a cap of $125,000 in income, and then the benefit begins to phase out and is out completely at 175.
That will be the finance committee's work.
Well,
That
it is, but it's something that we should be thinking about as well.
Absolutely. I think that for
Because,
that,
yeah,
I
by
think that
limiting
the,
it,
right.
if you take 2 teachers, you're at 120,000 right off the bat,
Oh.
and then you begin to phase out.
Right.
And that's a big concern,
So-
because the value of this is that our program has limitations that other programs in New England don't.
Our goal is for this map to be green, so we'll defer to the finance committee
Right,
to
exactly.
figure out how to best
I
get
think-
there, but if we remain yellow, that's still the first thing that people are going to see when they look at this map.
Right.
But that will, I know, I understand that's a conversation for a different,
That's a
Fine.
conversation that you'll have in finance. Because that bill will come, the other bill will come to you in finance, and you can marry them, I hope.
Mhm.
Okay, so without other questions, let's
So we're
look
gonna,
at the
we're
housing.
gonna shift to construction workforce, housing workforce.
I have a lot of words here, but the previous workforce board established a set of 8 really aspirational goals. In December of 2023, we needed the board to establish, even though they weren't really active, to reaffirm the goals so that we could write the state plan for WIOA and submit it on time so that we can continue to receive the federal funds that come in. As part of the board's work
Workforce Innovation Opportunity
Act, yes, that is WIOA.
Remember.
Thank you. The board wanted to make sure that as partners were engaged in this work, we were also considering certain things. So they gave us 5 considerations. That the core partners in the public workforce system strive to achieve the high-level goals by giving prioritization, emphasis, and special planning consideration for individuals who live in rural communities, individuals who are experiencing homelessness, individuals who are living below the federal poverty line, individuals who are at transitional points in their working lives, meaning immigrants and asylees, post-high school graduation, post-college graduation, laid off, and parents reentering the workforce, and so on. And all business and industry, including small business. And I'm going to put a pin in small business for you because it's going to come back later. And I want to talk to you about the considerations related to that.
On this slide, and I'm gonna give, you all were given this at the beginning of the session, but I'm going to give it to you again, because we're gonna all look at it together.
It's such a great document.
Thank you.
It's such a great thing to
So-
have.
We called out a few things here. This again is the most promising jobs brochure that the McClure Foundation and the Vermont Department of Labor put together every 2 years, I believe, 2 or so years. And what this is based off of a comprehensive economic forecast for the state, looking at demographics, looking at even, to a certain extent, evolution of technology, a whole number of different factors. I think Senator Ron Hinsdale, last time you were here, you were like, what are some of the numbers? And so trying to be responsive to some of that. If you look at the first column, it says 10-year projected openings. And so you can see for, and again, it's on the slide, which will be easier for me, carpenters, the 10-year projected opening based off of this comprehensive economic forecast that they projected is 4,270 will be needed over the next 10 years.
Just to be clear, I have these numbers.
Perfect.
And I was
Good.
curious about success metrics.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. Plumbers and pipe fitters, 930. Electrical and telecom line installers, 550. What I will flag is these numbers aren't based off of whatever housing goals we might be actively discussing right now. So I'm not sure if the bill, I apologize, it says we want to produce 100,000 more homes in 5 years. These numbers don't tie to, again, any kind of active goal that we are currently setting for ourselves. One thing that we've talked about, and this would, again, there's some dance here, because summer is obviously the busy season to build. We could do a little bit more outreach with our sister agency Commerce and do kind of some straight math, rough math, and if we were to kind of query some residential developers, if we asked you to build 20 more homes a year, what would that take for workforce? Like how many more plumbers, how many more drywall installers would you need? We could try to maybe get some more specific and better data. Again, it won't be perfect, but, and
How many
again,
did you say? Do you have a metric for how many people you're looking for to build homes in the state?
no, I was saying if we knew if we landed on like a goal this session that we were going to try to build something like 50,000 more homes over X years. And then when I did some rough math and I went to developers this summer and said, if you needed to build 20 more homes a year,
How
what
many?
would that take for these professions? We could potentially try to survey and gather some of that data. It'll be delicate because summer is the busy season. So I don't want to take them off of their jobs of building homes to fill out or do, again, we could figure it out anyway. But that was one thing I wanted to proactively come forward with based off of some of the conversation last time and some numbers, again, that we do have about the 10-year projections and the need to start off the conversation.
Because needs might be very different from what this column is 10-year projected
Projected
openings
openings, again,
versus
Right.
what the need is, which must be more substantial.
And it's not, again, it's not tied to if we were to say as our state goal, we want to build X number of homes. This is based off of
Exactly.
the Economist, a different type of economic forecast.
Does it project the aging demographic?
It does take in demographics
Right,
into account.
and the retirements in
Yes.
all, because they're.
Yes, that is
as
one
we
of the
know.
factors that goes into coming up with that economic projection.
Thanks.
And I will add here, in this brochure, you see the little gears. Those are things we added this year to indicate where there are active registered apprenticeship programs. So, and then it doesn't highlight this. I'm going to tell you here on this list that's on my slide. Plumbers and electricians are licensed occupations, and they have certain rules about how many people they can train under them. So when we're thinking about what's that workforce look like, we also need to be aware of some of the kind of structural limitations that are built into their ability to train and have a larger capacity. Another thing that I know about the electricians and plumbers licensing rules is that because most of the electricians and plumbers in Vermont came through the registered apprenticeship program, that is their common point of reference. That's their primary training mechanism, but there are other mechanisms built into the licensing rules that allow other pathways. And I think part of our work would be to help the licensing board and highlight those alternative routes to the public so that we have multiple avenues feeding into the licensing system instead of just apprenticeship. Having said all that,
So, question on that. That is an industry regulated, I mean, the plumbers and electricians have their own board, they regulate their own trade.
public safety.
If we found this summer that there was this huge disparity between the projected openings and what they currently say they can manage in terms of training people.
Yep.
And our need level, which may be much higher. Is that something you would work to fix, or is that a legislative fix? At what point do we,
We would
or
identify
could we
the
be partners
problem
in helping that?
and bring that to you all if there were a legislative fix needed.
Right.
We're currently engaged with both licensing boards on what I would call some tactical work around ratios, licensing requirements, making sure everybody understands how the system works. We've made some changes over the last couple of years. And what I want to give you a sense of the context, well, let's do some math here. So this is electricians and telecom line installers, 550 anticipated over 10 years, that's 55 a year. Hold that number.
Yeah.
Plumbers is 93 a year. So this coming weekend, our primary partner for electricians and plumbers is Vermont State University. They deliver the related instruction. They are also the sponsor of the program for any employer that has 4 or fewer apprentices. That's important because they're managing all of the ins and outs, again, of the small businesses. I'm going to keep pulling on the small business thread throughout my presentation. So who's completing this weekend? They have 105 electricians. So if we stay on that track, we will have an overabundance of electricians. We're finishing 105 electricians. A year, we need 55 a year. this is obviously one snapshot in time. They're also completing 80 plumbers. If we continue that, we won't have enough. And plumbers are obviously important because of the main thing that you think about them doing, but they also install heat pumps.
Yes.
Just carrying from our conversation earlier, we go out this summer, we collect data, we continue to crunch these numbers. We're never gonna be able to meet demand if we don't recruit more people to the state. So we can quibble over, is it, we need 20,000 more nurses or 500 more plumbers, or what is it? We're not gonna be able to train our way out of this, and we're not gonna be able to get there with the current population. So I just wanna, again, pull back to it. We don't have to relitigate our conversation around marketing budget. But in terms of making sure we have the foundation in place to be able to recruit people to Vermont, and I mean that from a program and infrastructure perspective, as well as the resource perspective to really market in a meaningful way, is really been underscoring all of our work so far, is that we all know we need to grow, and we're never going to be able to meet these targets if we aren't attracting more people to come live and work here.
Agreed. Acacia, and then David.
Well, everybody knows I'm gonna talk about housing, but I'm not gonna talk about building more units of housing because that's its own problem to solve. But I will just say some of my, like an example of my pet issue. UVM Medical Center provides housing or gets transitional housing for emergency room doctors. It's that, some of them live in my neighborhood and they were helped to purchase their home by UVM Medical Center. They're opening their new housing options, which is beautiful, in South Burlington. You could spend $150,000 on relocation services for traveling nurses and nurses who want to relocate here permanently, and help locate them in Burlington with people who have an extra room. There is so much that could be done to actually just help people arrive here. We spend so much money while overlooking some extremely basic solutions. I mentioned this anytime I talk to UVM. I've mentioned this to Home Share Vermont, because we basically, they all pay for housing, relocation services that aren't based in the state and don't really do a good job helping them. They look on Facebook, they lose opportunity because there is no coordination for making Vermont a sticky place for them to stay. It is so much less expensive than so many of our other pie in the sky solutions. And it's a win-win because a lot of people have large historic single family homes in Burlington and South Burlington that have the extra room and would love to host a nurse.
I love your term you just used of making Vermont a sticky place to stay. I might adopt that.
We need to apply paper.
No, I agree with you on that point.
Water state.
Are we ready to keep moving through?
If I could, just, Madam Chair, if I could just make one.
Yeah, sorry,
So-
David was
so-
next, yeah.
So this is a great tool, it's a great program. Fully support everything you guys are doing, but the reality is we're all feeding from the same trough.
Yes.
Whether it's Massachusetts,
yes.
Maine, et cetera.
That's true.
The real issue is, so housing is a contributor, but the real issue is immigration. We have to increase the pipeline of potential workers coming into the US, period. And until that happens, I think we're all just gonna be beating our head on the table.
Yep,
I agree, but unfortunately, we can advocate, but we all
I fully
know
recognize
federal-
that, but I
federal
do
issue.
applaud.
Join us at noon to launch an immigration legal defense fund.
Right, at 12 noon in the Cedar Creek program.
Wow. Nice.
Yes. It was nice mentions this morning on VP.
Oh, was there?
Agreed,
It was in
it's
Washington
become,
Post.
but to your point, we're competing, right, town to town, we're competing state to state, and now in the region, and now we're competing all across the country, where again, we have this individual I was talking to was like, I'm Wisconsin's trying to lure me back. I'm
Right.
not gonna go, but they found me and they are doing everything they can to, flood my consciousness with ideas of moving back to Wisconsin.
And we,
So-
to Heather's credit, we have done programs and messaging like that
Yes.
on the returnship program.
Yes,
And she has worked
yes.
hard to develop that, but you're absolutely right, until we solve our legal immigration problem, we are in a stuck spot. We're stuck in the negative side of sticky, we are sticky stuck as opposed to, wanting to attract.
We've tried to, but we haven't been able to figure it out yet, but one of the things that I've talked about with the Office of Professional Regulation off and on, right, is the international licensing recognition, being on the border of Canada. Like, is there more that we could be doing to recognize professional licensure and in the occupations that's relevant with Canada? And-
There was an initiative in health and welfare about medical, doctors and nurses credentials coming into the US, to the states.
Yeah.
That was a great idea.
We've tried to dive as.
We've approached that in
Yes.
GovOps, several times, actually, on
Yes.
particularly on nursing, and, but this is, I think maybe off session, we should
Yeah.
begin to have
Yes.
more.
Because I feel like it's one of those things we try to do the deep dive and then it's like squirrel because of whatever, right? Flooding or pandemic. And then, it's something, again, I do think that we should lean into seeing.
Let's work
We've
on
been
that.
What we
fairly
can do to
successful
lead.
though in a lot of areas. I mean, I think of things like Northwestern Hospital in St. Albans.
Mhm.
It seems like every other doctor is a
Mhm.
Canadian who's moved here from Canada and is practicing here, or who is commuting daily.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
maybe not now.
Now, yes,
Yeah.
still.
We need them now, but,
Right. So we
they're
did,
not gonna do it if it's an hour and a half wait.
yeah, I'm just trying to be mindful of your hour mark.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had anything more on this slide, Jay, but we did bring some more, data around, again, our
Who's where.
apprentices and who's
Great.
where as it
Perfect.
relates to construction. But-
Yeah, so I have a couple of points that I just want to round out this last slide in our discussion here about the available workforce. We have a supply of young people exiting high school in tech centers. That is an area that I used to work for the Agency of Education. This is an area that both of us are very passionate about. How do we connect with young people and get them into the labor force? And 2 years ago, when you passed an updated law on the registered apprenticeship program, Act 55, we included an innovation called Youth Apprenticeship. I'm going to talk to you about that in a couple of slides. But most of the work that we're doing with employers right now is about their incumbent workers, taking people that they've hired wherever they found them, and then building a training program through registered apprenticeship to bring them up to speed, or partnering with the Vermont Training Program at ACCD to be able to advance the leadership skills of those workers. So while, yes, we are struggling to get people to fill open positions, we do have people who are here who we
Still
need
aren't
to tap
working.
into,
Yeah.
and connect to the workforce, and then be able to advance them.
I know you guys all know this stat, but we have I think at this point, less than 50% of our high school grads matriculating into additional higher education or training. And we graduate about 5,000 kids a year. So that means rough math, 2,500 are graduating with a plan where they have a structure for what they're going to do next, whether it's college, whether it's training, whether it's purposeful employment. Then we have about 2,500 that are not graduating with a plan or matriculating onwards to higher education, training, or again, purposeful next steps.
That's a number from last year, 2,500 roughly that are graduating without identified, next step.
Yeah, I could get the, BSAC has, or
Did
Advanced
you hear
Vermont,
that,
be able to quote
Keisha,
it
in education?
pretty well, but
That
we graduated about
The
less
2,500 that are graduating
roughly
without.
half of our high school
identified next
grads
step.
are not graduating and matriculating onto additional higher education training or a purposeful next step, graduating without a plan.
Right, yes, we heard it here and
Yes,
You
but
probably
I
heard-
hadn't
oh,
heard
yeah.
the specific number of 2,500.
Well, so again, we graduate about 5,000 a year,
Yeah.
and if it's half,
Right.
that is rough.
Actually less than half.
It's less than half now.
It's much worse than for boys.
And then, yes, you can break it down by gender, by different demographic information. So again, there's a whole nother body of work going on, again, around that right now with the Department of Labor and a few other partners like Advanced Vermont and the Agency of Education and the Clerk foundation, VSAC, that is meeting to try to, under some earmark money, figure out how we can better reach high schoolers and make sure whatever they are doing next is purposeful and they're not just kind of falling off the cliff when we don't know exactly where they're going or what they're doing.
Yeah, 'cause there is just such a rich opportunity with that group of people. It's just hard to.
And so I haven't said anything about carpenters. Obviously, that is a very important occupation there. We've used federal funds over the last couple of years.
Is that next?
It's not, it's still on this,
Okay.
Foundation slide. We need 4,278 carpenters over the next 10 years. So there are no training programs for carpenters. As an adult, you can't go to your tech center and get a carpenter training program. There's no adult CTE programs for those. Youth Build resource programs are targeted to youth. And so there's a gap. So we identified that gap a couple of years ago and started leveraging federal apprenticeship grant funds to build out registered apprenticeship. You hear about it as the ABC, Associated Builders and Contractors Program in Chittenden County, where they have multiple competing employers working together on this apprenticeship program. And that started 4 years ago. There's some work with the Vermont Talent Pipeline Management Program, which was funded by the Agency of Commerce. And a couple of weeks ago, they just launched their training academy, Vermont Construction Academy. So that's the long tail on that. Is it going to solve all the problems? No, but it's a start.
So forgive me, but my understanding is CTE we have this robust carpentry program. They build houses. Many of our CTE centers.
The construction center is gonna be more for adults.
Right, so our really missing, our real gap is with adult CTE in carpenters.
Yes. And I'll put a pin in adult CTE because we're probably gonna come back
If we have time.
maybe next year
Okay.
after that. So I'm gonna buzz through these slides. So again, I discovered heat maps in Excel and now I know how to create them. So you're gonna get heat maps.
Good work.
This is a heat map of where, all the apprentices are in electrical and plumbing.
So the guys that are in, men and women who are in the programs now, or the opportunities?
The number of active apprentices as of a couple of days ago.
Is this by, where they live or where they work?
This is by where their employer.
Where the apprentice is registered, so that's what the employer.
Employer sponsor is.
Any idea of like how saturation, like, is this good news or is it bad news? You know, is this,
I think it's
or is it
it's
just
good
kind of
news,
nowhere?
given the number of people that we have, compared to that last slide. Are we contributing to that 10-year number? The limitation again here is on the licensing rules and the ratios that employers have to have, and also their willingness to take on an apprentice and reduce productivity essentially around that, because apprentices also have to have a mentor.
I know this will surprise nobody. I cannot let the opportunity go without saying it. As we look at all the heat maps, you're gonna consistently see Chittenden and the Washington County area being where all the activity is for the most part, and the rest of Vermont pretty dramatically behind in numbers. And so one of the things that, again, we need to continue to focus on together is making sure we're expanding opportunity statewide to all 14 counties, and we're not, putting all of our eggs in 2 or 3 baskets. And what we are doing to make sure, again, you're gonna consistently see Essex County, Grand Isle County, doesn't matter what it is, right? With lower numbers, what do those communities need to be able to continue to sustain themselves?
And even Windsor and Rutland, who I think would be right there, much closer. It's, to me,
I think also important, I'm gonna keep pulling on the small business thread. There are a number of businesses that serve the whole state. They are based in these counties, but they deploy workers across the state, so.
Yes, the correlation between electricians, plumbers, and carpenters, all small business. So yes.
And then the next slide is where the sponsors are located. Counts of the number of electrician and plumber sponsors located in those.
Thank you, too bad, I apologize.
So just information, observation, we want to see this number grow. This number can only grow if we can address the ratios and if we can diversify the delivery of the related instruction. Right now, Vermont State University Randolph is doing all online instruction for all 4 years of the apprenticeship program for electricians and plumbers. We'd like to we're in the process of having a curriculum developed that the adult CTE programs can deliver to adults in their region. So if you don't like to learn on the computer, you could go to your local tech center and sit through that class. The entry point there is for high school students to be able to take the level 1 and get a leg up. That leads to my next slide. This is the age demographics of.
I just want, before you leave the sponsorship program, slide, it levels out a little more with the, I mean, it's still, but Washington County, 35 Windsor and Rutland, not that far behind in terms of the
No.
sponsors,
Just the northern,
which
yeah.
still not up, but
Yeah.
thanks.
Looking at age demographics, you see now that we've implemented the youth apprenticeship program and we're able to see in the data students in the tech centers and students who previously were in the tech centers, that 61% of electrical and plumbing apprentices are between 16 and 24. Last year, when I wrote the report to the legislature, the average age of an apprentice was 26. We couldn't see the CTE students. Right now, the average age of an apprentice is 24.9. So again, working on that strategy to work with the group of students that are here.
But they can begin those apprenticeships fairly early.
At age 16.
Age 16, so and with dual enrollment and with early college, they can get some of these, they can really be ready to go at a much
There
earlier
are
age.
lots of options.
Yeah.
This last slide is a little busy, but basically it's all the tech centers and the number of students by age. That's what those bar graphs are. So you can see the orange is age 18. That's Central Vermont Career Center and Stafford Technical Center in Rutland have dedicated programs to plumbing and electrical, and that's why we see such high numbers there. Employers give CTE students advanced standing upon hire, and that recognizes the learning and experience in the CTE program, and like a dual enrollment program, allows students to move more quickly to complete their program and get to licensure. And then my last few slides are about business in Vermont and the consideration from the board rule. We need to consider the needs of small business. So what does that look like? This slide gives you a table. If you want to sit here and stare at the table, you'll figure something out eventually. But if you go to the next slide, which is a bar chart, you can start to see the story emerge. And if you move to the next slide, what you see is the stacking of all those business sizes.
Right.
And the vast majority, over 86% of businesses in Vermont have fewer than 20 employees.
Right. This committee is very clear on that. We have our small business. Yeah, and our economic development bill is really focused on small businesses,
And so what it means for workforce development is we can't continue to go out to each business and say, what kind of training do you need? How can we help you? We need intermediary type organizations to be able to do that, representing industries. We've given a grant to the Vermont Manufacturing Extension Center to go have that business talk with those small businesses and come up with a plan. We have done the same thing with Associated Builders and Contractors. There are many other intermediary organizations that can go out for us and come back and tell us what those businesses need without us wasting their time.
Dare I say though, most of them are, again, in all of our conversations, what do you need? We need people. We need someone that's gonna show up on time. with some minimal soft
So-
skills.
Yeah.
With some
David,
minimal
you had a question?
soft
I did,
skills.
I was
So-
just curious, this 87%, how does it stack up against our neighbors? Yeah.
I didn't look
Just
there.
curious.
Yeah.
We didn't look.
My guess is in
guess
New
is-
England, probably not dissimilar, New Hampshire, and my guess is it.
I mean, maybe an
Uh,
outlier,
I
but
expect-
Who knows? We may be a bit, that's a
curious.
question,
that's,
good question.
And so just to Kendall's point, given how constrained the labor market is and what I said before, it means that we're working with government partners on more tactical things. So I'm going to reveal, like we've been talking with Serve, Learn and Earn. We talked to all the other agencies and departments, and I'm going to pull in AmeriCorps here. AmeriCorps obviously has undergone a lot of unfortunate changes from the federal level, but in January, we started a policy academy with a small team from Vermont with the National Governors Association, exploring how we can more effectively connect AmeriCorps service volunteer programs to the workforce. Given the changes at the federal level, we still intend to pursue that.
Good.
We received a grant of $50,000 from the Schultz Family Foundation to be able to fund this work. And on the backside, again, I can't tell you a story if I don't have data. And so that grant is going to fund some changes to Vermont Job Link and our behind the scenes case management system to be able to help track those volunteers into the workforce and then be able to say what the economic impact is on those individuals. There's also a nexus with the Climate Action Office
Right.
and with the Energy Action Network. These organizations are all part of that conversation. And it's related to the construction workforce as well.
I know we're bumping up on your schedule. Do you want me to take a few minutes to talk about the Department of Labor versus the Office of Workforce Strategy and
Yeah, no, and-
Development?
and how
or
they-
How can we round this out for you guys?
Great. Yeah, it's about 3 minutes.
Okay, so, again, we touched on this last
And we're gonna be
time.
returning to this because I need to pass this out next week, just as we do our cannabis bill. Those are our 2 bills left. So we're hoping,
Yes, so, yes.
So I'm actually connecting Matt Barowitz with our government operations, folks, because, I think he's brilliant
It's
and,
brilliant.
telling us that we're down from 2011 high of jobs. I mean, he's always good at telling us why people are feeling upset,
Yes.
and why the economy's not working for us. He expressed something that I'm unable to move past, which is that our data has the potential to get worse and worse if people don't feel comfortable or safe talking to the federal government right now. So everyone who relies on data to do good things, I hope are thinking about that. I anecdotally have said, like, I stopped. And maybe, but with part of everyone who's not that, make to say,
Thank you very much. Roland,
you.
thank you. Jay, Sabina, thank you very much. This was great.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
Do you need us to stay for the next, that you're moving on to housing?
We're
That's
moving
the
on to
next
housing, yeah.
I do. I don't know when. I just need to call you on my way in.
Emails from them, so I'm sure Cam Allen is. I'm sure they're